Winning. Ayo. Zempuck here. Another day not working for the man. All right. Today I'm going to ask myself, actually, a question that I ask myself all the time, to be honest. And I thought I'd force you to listen to my answer, which is why are Americans so terrible with money? That's a loaded question, right? First of all, I want to make sure you guys hear me that I'm not knocking on Americans. And this is not a problem that only Americans have, right? But I think I have a unique perspective in the sense that, I'm a first generation immigrant, so I can see the clear difference between how Americans who are born and raised here act compared to me, right? Compared to my parents, who, essentially, financially in some ways that I model after, right? And I consider myself an American at this time, and not all Americans are bad at money, but most are, right? If you look at statistics, the average savings rate is horrendous, and people just seem very confused about the basics of personal finance. Like, not just personal finance, right? Y'all are confused about personal finance, but also macroeconomics. So just generally bad about money everywhere, right? So why is this the case, right? I can boil it down to several major factors, right? Number one, I think maybe because the productivity is extremely high. Because you have to understand that only in a place where people are assured that the constituents or the citizens are going to keep making more money does a system of credit really kind of materialize at all, right? You look at countries like China, where I'm from, they just skipped credit cards, right? There's no real sense of credit, and they just went directly to digital payments. But why is that, right? It's more like, when you have a state-controlled economy, if you lost your job, you're not going to be able to replace it, right? There's no free market economy and competition. Without competition, you just can't depend on having a good income. So without that as a base, no one's going to, say, let you have a line of credit when they don't think that, the society can provide you a very reasonable means to actually pay for these goods in the future, right? So the availability of credit is number one, right? People, I think, are confused these days about what credit means. They think it's money, in your pocket, which it's not. It's every little bit of credit that you use most commonly via credit cards. It's a loan. It's an extremely high interest short-term loan, right? So terrible idea, but the easy availability of credit is one of the main factors of how Americans become very bad at money, right? Another reason, and this is in no particular order, right? I think it's interesting. It's taboo to talk about money in this country, generally speaking, right? I remember, having to really kind of break the ice about this subject when I was at my first job, talking with my fellow, first-time white-collar workers at an office. I was like, why couldn't we talk about what we make? None of us make anything, right? I was pretty sure at the time, I didn't make much money, and neither did anybody else. So then, it's useful to know at which point did that change, right? Like, if I'm talking to somebody a little bit more senior, I would love to know what they were making, right? Because I remember I was joining a team of two or three other people that only had two or three other people in it. Some of them have been working there for 3 to 4 years. I wanted to know, what can I look forward to in 3 to 4 years, right? And it's hard to get people to open up, right? I don't know about you guys, but at least I know in my old culture, Chinese people will ask you how much you make, the first time they meet you. It's just not taboo. It's just considered, it's like small talk, right? How Americans always say, how are you, when you see someone, even though they don't expect an answer, which is really weird, because, if someone asks me how I am, and I'm not doing well, maybe I want to start complaining to them, but that's not really a thing, right? The phrase, how are you, is not really a question. It's as if you just said, hi, right? my point is, this taboo against talking about money really contributes to the number three reason, again, in no real particular order, which is the complete lack of financial education that this society provides you, right? Like, I was told actually, that some people have like home ec class. I mean, I never had this class in high school, but I think some Middle Americans did, and they said, "Oh, we learn how to balance a checkbook." I was like, "Well, that's a start. That's better than nothing, right?" But it seems like maybe parents think the school's teaching this to the children, but in fact, school's not really teaching personal finance, and parents, because of for some reason the taboo feeling towards money, don't really explicitly teach their children either. And therefore, kids never learn the subject from anyone and starts to think that a credit card means actual money, right? Like, you get a credit card with like $1,000 limit, and you think, "Hey, I have $1,000," when in fact you definitely do not have $1,000, right? You have $1,000 if you have $1,000 in the bank right now. Not like a credit line is not money. I mean, I have a combined credit line of over $100,000, but I'm not gonna go spend it. Like, that's ridiculous, right? Doesn't even concern. Like, that doesn't even like come up to me, right? Like, because I'm thinking about, I can only spend like 1% utilization. Ideally, I'd like to keep it under 1%, which is why I have enough credit lines to go over 6-digit in terms of credit limit. Because really, every month, I would like to keep my spending on credit cards to be below $1,000. So overall, the whole credit card utilization is well under 1%. Okay? Think about the difference in mentality between what I just said and someone who spends their entire credit limit thinking that meant that, that's money that they can use. I mean, you can technically use up to your credit limit, but that's a terrible idea, right? That's if someone told you, "Hey, you could walk through a field of coals and come out okay." I mean, I guess it depends on what you think okay is. Like, you could do that and perhaps come out alive, but I wouldn't suggest that you do that. Okay, it's extreme. I would imagine it would be extremely painful and totally not worth the trouble. Okay, it's like, why would you do that? But you can, but why would you do that? Same thing with credit card usage. You can spend up to the limit, but extremely painful. Okay. So the reason why I pose this question is not to, again, it's not to like make fun of Americans, right? Like, it's really about, you have to understand the context of how we got to where we are in order to solve that problem, right? So what's my proposal for solving that problem? Well, education is really easy, right? Let me just be clear. I'm not saying like my own personal education was explicit, right? Because I didn't have home ec class, and my parents didn't teach me anything. So how the heck did I learn, right? I think it's just having good parents, right? Who had good fiscal values and who because I live with them, I can just observe, imitate by observation, right? I find this to be, for most people, they just tend to pattern their financial kind of abilities based on the people that they grew up with, the people that they're closest to, right? So in that sense, this is exactly why, someone like me is talking on the internet, right? Because I think I can help you, right? Like, I might not know you, or I might. And I feel like, because I've already demonstrated that, I've completely succeeded at the money thing. See, you don't have to listen to me about like cooking or romance. These are things that I know nothing about or very little about. But on money, it's super easy, okay? It's super simple, not easy. Right? Simple to implement, difficult to execute. Let's call it that, right? Yeah, so the education part I can help with. The taboo part, I think it's just, honestly, you should be able to talk about money with your family and friends, right? The people that you trust. I'm not saying like, You don't have to go 180 and go from, how Americans are, which is talk about, how much you make and things like that with no one, to Chinese people, which is talk about how much you make immediately to strangers, right? Let's be clear. That's very extreme, and sometimes people talk about that just to kind of brag or humble brag, and it's disgusting. Nobody needs that either, okay? But you could at least talk about it with your, people that you trust, right? And on the credit part, right? Like I think the third reason that I said was the easily available credit, basically to anyone, right? Credit card companies just give you credit very easily. Well, that part is easy. Once you have the education and some sort of established relationship with people that you can actually, get advice from, the credit part is just, recognizing what is a really good thing versus a illusion of a good thing, right? Just like think about it like this: like I love KFC and fried chicken, right? And every time I go in there, they're like, "This is special for a bucket of dark meat," which is my favorite, right? Like for a really cheap price, and I do tend to buy those things. But here's the thing: you don't always have to gorge yourself on the good stuff, right? So don't eat the whole bucket, or don't spend up to your credit limit. It's you can condition yourself, right? The credit limit is kind of an accelerant on how Americans get to be really bad and sink themselves into a hole, and I can understand that, but it is not the root problem, right? It's just a incredible symptom of the disease. So get yourself an education, go communicate with somebody, like ask for advice when you don't know what you're doing, and that will solve the problematic symptoms of the disease, in due course. All right? Thanks, guys. Next time.